So as you know already, the Azure platform has regions all around the world, and Microsoft is adding regional infrastructure all the time. But when it comes to building out your solutions and enabling disaster recovery, you want to work with paired regions. So here's the idea. Let's say that you're working with the North America geography, and you're going to build an application in the West US region. Now, in this particular case, within this geography and working with West US, the pair partner, the preferred region to work with here is East US. So these two regions are considered pairs. And so basically the idea is these regions are built to work together. They're optimized to work together for disaster recovery. And the guidance is you always want to look up and see what are the paired regions. So you make sure you use that paired partner for whatever region you're targeting for production. So in a little bit, I'll show you where to find this information. But let's say that we're going to deploy a production application in West US, and we're going to use the East US region for the disaster recovery site. So in this scenario, you might have virtual machines you're going to deploy, or you might have app services that you're going to put out there in West US. And one of the things you want to think about in terms of design is you want to make sure that you build that same infrastructure in the pair region. So for example, for disaster recovery in East US, I would want to make sure that I either reserve or provision virtual machines to provide the capacity I'm going to need for my application. Because when it comes time to do my disaster recovery and basically fail over to East US, I've got that capacity, I've got the virtual machines that I need, I've got the app services already there and running, and then I'm ready to go. And it makes the failover process or the disaster recovery exercise much quicker. Now let's say in the West US region, we're going to provision some Azure storage accounts, and in that configuration, by default, geo-redundant storage or GRS-based Azure storage is used. And that's automatically replicated 3 times within the primary region. But when you've got a paired relationship set up here and you're using that geo-redundant storage, you're also going to replicate the data over to the paired region, so in East US, and you're also going to get 3 copies of your data there as well. Now let's say you're also going to utilize Azure SQL in the West US region. You're going to have a master database out there for your application. You can also asynchronously replicate that database over to East US, and the East US region, in this case, is going to be optimized for that replication. And that would be kind of the recommended guidance there. You don't have to use a paired region for Azure SQL database replication, although it is recommended by Microsoft. And so really the kind of fine print there is that with Azure SQL standard geo-replication, you can configure asynchronous replication for databases to a paired region. And with premium geo-replication, you can pick any region that you want. So that's another consideration as well for your designs. And we'll look more at SQL in a little bit. And so now that we know about some of these capabilities, let's talk about some more of the benefits here when working with paired regions. So first, one of the big benefits here is physical isolation between the two regions. So there's typically at least 300 miles between the two paired regions, and that's good for natural disasters. So if you have a natural disaster, take out a region where your primary infrastructure is running, the idea is that the other region in the pair will be far enough away that it won't be impacted by that natural disaster. One of the other benefits that we kind of already looked at is that there's various places within the platform where we've got built-in replication. So services like geo-redundant storage work natively with this paired region configuration. Now, another great benefit here is this concept of region recovery order. So let's say that the two regions you're using both get knocked out because of some kind of issue. If you've got your application spread across both those regions, Microsoft guarantees to have one of those regions recovered with priority. So when they go to start doing a recovery, they're going to work really hard on at least one of those. So if you've got your application architected across two regions like that, you got a better likelihood of getting your application restored in a faster time. Now we also have sequential updates across paired regions. So basically planned maintenance, anything that the Azure team needs to do to work on the system under the hood, those are going to be rolled out to the paired regions sequentially. So not at the same time. So that means if there's any bugs introduced, it's only going to impact that first region, and hopefully they'll figure it out before the other region gets updated. And then finally, in terms of data residency, basically what this means is a single region resides within the same geography as its peer partner or its pair partner. There's one exception to that, which is Brazil South at the current time. But this is good in those scenarios where you need to meet data residency requirements or tax and law enforcement jurisdiction purposes, things like that. So now that we understand the benefits of paired regions, let's jump into the documentation and we'll take a look at how you can figure out which regions are paired together. Okay, so here we are in the official Azure documentation, and as you're planning your designs and thinking about disaster recovery, what you want to do is check out this topic, Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery, Azure Paired Regions. And so what you can do is scroll down the list here, and based on the geography that you're working with, you can figure out which regions work together. So for example, if we scroll down, We've got North America here. We can see that East US and West US are pairs, just like we looked at in the slide deck. Or maybe we want to use North Central US and South Central US. But this is how you would look up this information. You just find it here in the Azure documentation. And there's also information about some of the stuff we talked about earlier, some of the benefits and some of the stuff about how this all works, cross-region activities and benefits of paired regions. Let's go ahead and move on to the next video, and we'll take a look at how you can determine which patterns and practices you should be using for architectures on the Azure platform.